the second best speech in this game. Look at that. Everyone's just running into the machine guns. Music kicking in. Really nice music. I like it. Hey, how's it going, folks? Admiral Tori here, and welcome aboard for another video on my channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about my experience with the Call of Duty World War II PC beta. At the same time, I guess I can talk about my backgrounds with Call of Duty and my expectations from this game. Right away, I genuinely enjoyed the beta. It's been a long time since I actually wanted to try a Call of Duty game. My time with Call of Duty really stems all the way back to roughly around the Call of Duty 2 to Call of Duty Black Ops 1 days. Those were the times that I would consider that Call of Duty was my most favorite game at that point. Mainly because it was simply a fun game to grab. You get to shoot people, and the ultimate experience really comes down to after a long day, you jump onto your PC, console, and play with your friends. Search and destroy, get some epic kill streaks. That was really the thrill that I was looking for when it comes to playing a Call of Duty game. It went downhill after Black Ops 1 for the reason that my Xbox 360 got the red ring of death. At the same time, Call of Duty was never the same after Modern Warfare 2. For those who don't know what happened, because I'm that OG when it comes to Call of Duty, after the smashing hits of Modern Warfare 2 was just simply a marketing hit for the company overall, it's probably the highest point of Call of Duty in terms of what they have done. Activision got into a little pickle with the developers over how the marketing should be handled, if I recall correctly. All I know is that Robert Bowling, who was one of the top figures in Infinity Wards, along with many of the developers, were kicked out. And as a result, there were things that in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was not fixed. One perfect example was the one-man army Noob Tube. They did fix the Javelin glitch, which you pull out your Semtex and switch to your Javelin and just run around and become a suicide bomber, but the game was fairly broken. But yet, it was still fun because of the memories. So with Call of Duty World War II, it felt really good because I looked at, Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3. It was cool. It was cool at first. Black Ops 2 was the first Call of Duty that really puts the franchise into a future warfare theme. And technically, if you look at Modern Warfare 2, that's also considered future warfare because the game takes place ahead of its time. The game was released like in 2010. I think the game took place in 2016. So it isn't like to the point where, it's all futuristic, but the point is it's still ahead of its time. So it was cool, but then the franchise shifted towards more of the marketing aspects. And that's where I just completely lose trust in Activision and the interest of the game. And to this day, they still doing the same old pattern with just selling everything they can out of the game. But that is not the point with today's video when it comes to talking about this game. How do I feel about this game? Well, when you look at the previous Call of Duties, people were really upset, especially from the recent Call of Duty, which was Advanced Warfare. I don't recall, I'm losing count, like Advanced Warfare, Futuristic Warfare, Black Ops, I don't know. It's all these futuristic stuff jumping all over the place and all these gadgets, cheap weapons, supply drops. These were the things that really turned me off from Call of Duty, and at that point anyways, I wasn't even bothering with Call of Duty anymore. I was actually going with the Battlefield train. Now, I've been playing Battlefield before, when Call of Duty went downhill. Call of Duty at one point had a respectable audience. I mean, people actually talk about Call of Duty. It wasn't something that people looked down on. It was something that you would, start a conversation when you mentioned a video game at that time. It was that big of a game. If you were to talk to someone who say what kind of game you play, the first game that I hear someone mention would be Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops, or Call of Duty 4, or World at War. Those are the 4 Call of Duty games that I really enjoy at that time. Today, it's a joke on the internet, of course, and I only try World War II because it went back to its roots in terms of what I was expecting. Me, the gun, and my opponents, and of course, well, with the limited time on the beta, I didn't really get a chance to really play with friends, but it felt very clean, and that's what makes Call of Duty really fun to play back in the days. It was simplistic, and yes, you can add all these complex stuff and add more things to the game, but at the end of the day, we all know what we want from a game. We want to have fun with the game, and adding all these complex, fast-paced things just really kills the fun for me. It was going away from the original flavor of Call of Duty. Aside from that, yeah, I felt the game was there. Am I going to buy the game? That is a different story. With World War II, looking from the trailer, looking at the campaign, and playing on the PC, definitely on the PC, this game, as usual, has a really shit port. For whatever reason, no matter how many copies Call of Duty gets sold at GameStop or digitally distributed on Steam or across any platform through the cloud, Activision just refuses to fund any sort of coding for this game, and it's so bad to the point that it's a hit or miss. Some people said that Call of Duty runs perfectly fine on their PC, but for me and several others who even have like the most beast machine, this game just horrendous. It stutters all over the place, and that is the most frustrating form of playing a game. I'd rather play at like 30 FPS solid, stable, then play at like 60 FPS, drop down to 30, 60, 30. It just really throws off your aim. And with the fact that the FPS affects your sensitivity in this game, that is like a really old thing. Yeah, it's really frustrating. And this was something that I was not surprised of because, well, the irony is that when the Call of Duty franchise started with the original Call of Duties, with Infinity Ward being the innovators before they became like the company that people just simply hate because they couldn't do a game correctly. Because remember, after Modern Warfare 2, the developer team got a overhaul with Activision, and they're technically not Infinity Wars that we know of today. The game started off as a PC platform. The original Call of Duty was PC only, and they moved on to the console with different companies like Spark Games. So PC just gets really the short end of the stick, and I can easily predict that this game is going to die pretty easily on PC. So in terms of my interest, yeah, I only have a PC. I don't have a console. I mean, I would play the game if I had a console, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to spend and buy a new console just to play a Call of Duty game. Now that's only like the tip of the iceberg. I have problems with this game. Ever since that explosion of the hatred of the recent Call of Duty, which was Advanced Warfare, I don't even know if you can call it recent anymore because this game's coming out soon, but people were just upset that this was futuristic, and Activision, going in with the damage control, wanted to change the trend here, and they right away, I can feel it from this game that this game was somewhat rushed. They got the mechanics right, the simplicity that we're looking for, but you can feel that, I'm not sure, but when I play this game, I feel like this game wasn't actually a World War II game to begin with. It felt like they were building a game already, and they just reskinned it with the World War II theme. And that's what most people were looking for. It was the theme, but since the theme really forces the player to, the atmosphere of the world to be more realistic, like not having all these jetpacks and jumping, running on the wall, then yeah, that is where most of the clean Call of Duty feel is coming for this game. But it was rushed, and I can tell because there are a lot of details that really bothers me. Now, Right now, people are making a big deal of the swastika and female soldiers. I personally don't even care. If with the money that Activision had, they could have simply had two different settings. One settings where they enabled swastikas and have no female soldiers, and there's the other settings to make people happy to have female soldiers and not have the swastika, because we live in a modern world where our thinking is different from 100 years ago. And a lot of people are just upset that they have a female soldier. I am tolerant. I'm not going to make a big deal of it. It's the game, I can deal with it. It feels really weird, like a lot of people said that when they hear female soldiers, but there were female soldiers in World War II in terms of the Soviet Unions with their female snipers, because the belief was that females had very steady hands and it was ideal to give a female a rifle at the time. But overall, it really does ruin the historical accuracy of the game, but that was not what the game is looking for. Realism is not what makes Call of Duty fun. It was the arcade shooter. Now, I wouldn't say the historical accuracy is the problem with having females and swastikas, and being a debate in this game. I think it's more of a logical view of the game. And when I say logical, does it make sense? So the things that really, doesn't make sense or ruins the immersion for me is that, you play zombies, okay? If anyone play any Call of Duty game, you play zombies, you hold the build button to rebuild the barriers when you ever fight the zombies, shoot the zombies. Now that is implemented in this game, it feels really off, and one of the goals that Infinity Ward had in the beginning of the franchise was to make this game as authentic as possible, at the same time realistic, but yet not too realistic or too, to the point where it's boring. And when I say boring, I'm talking about realism. Now, realism, they do exist games, Armored 3, Red Orchestra 2, but the overall audience, the overall marketing does not gear to realism. If it did, then the Red Orchestra 2 would be more popular than the Call of Duty franchise. It is geared to a smaller audience. It's easier to jump onto an action, fast-paced game than to play a realistic game, because realistic game takes like 10 minutes to get your first kill, and it's frustrating at times once you understand the learning curve of the game. This game was simple. This game can be used for any particular player. You can just pick it up and have fun. So when I saw that, you're building the walls, it really did bother me. Building the bridge, is it that a big of a deal to not buy the game? Of course not. But these small details starts to add up, because the other detail that really bothers me is that I purposely, in the beginning, pick the British soldier. And after watching multiple gameplays, I didn't hear a single Englishman speak. So I was curious when I got the chance to play the beta. And behold the truth, my character does not say a single word that a Englishman would say. Everyone in this game, even I would consider Germans, they're all speaking the American dialect of English. I don't know how else to describe American English. And you can really feel like this game is really geared towards the Americans. Now, of course, people with their history saying that, yeah, America was the contributing factor, the one who tipped the scale for the warfare, and they did most of the contribution in terms of how to strategically win World War II. Now, when it comes to the lives, the body counts, the battles in the European assault, hands down, it was all towards the British and the Soviet Union, but yet this game is making it look like the Americans did most of the battles in the European front. And this is something I just don't understand. There was only one particular game that actually focused on the Pacific warfare, and that was World at War. And that was America's biggest war during World War II. That was the war that brought America to war. America didn't participate in any battles until the Japanese brought them into war, and Hitler thought that, if Japan declares war on America, let's declare war on America to make themselves look like they're participating in the agreement. So yeah, America was behind the scenes. If you don't know any history about America, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Lend-Lease plan, which basically lent weapons, tanks, and all sorts of stuff to the Soviet Union and the British to fight the fascists in a way, because they were against fascism. But America was in no position to fight the Germans or enter the war because of the Great Depression. So in a sense, America did play a big factor in the war, but when it comes to battles, you expect British, and these are the details that really bother me. This is why I feel like the game was rushed out. This is why I feel like the game was reskinned in theme, and at the same time that marketing factor, because I'm assuming that majority of the Call of Duty customers are Americans. That's what I assume. I haven't seen that many Europeans or Asians who play Call of Duty. When I think of Europeans, I think of people playing CSGO. When I think of the Asian market, I think of League of Legends or any other MOBAs. Call of Duty is really geared towards the American, and I'm assuming that they just pick the American side of World War II, and they've done this multiple times with the previous Call of Duties. And yeah, that really throws it off. And there's even maps like Gibraltar, I think, that has a British flag being flown on the staff, and yet everyone is American on the Allied side. And the German side, the guy has a German accent, of course, but he is speaking American English, and it really stands out. So that's the thing that is a killer for me, and I can definitely see that this game was just, the thing that is selling it is just the World War II theme. But overall, there are things that need to be worked on, and that is, it's one of those experiences that I didn't really care about getting this game, but I was just curious of what it's like. And another thing that you might have noticed is that big thing for the PC, aside from the PC having a really shitty port, but with me struggling, you might have noticed that the graphics setting are on the lowest, and you might have also noticed that the sniper rifle, another small detail, I have never seen someone put a strip clip into a sniper rifle that has a scope. In every Call of Duty I have played, from Call of Duty Finest Hour to Call of Duty 4, Call of Duty 5, even Black Ops, they reload one by one. And the reason why is because the scope protrudes the strip clip. I don't think that in real life you can actually reload that way. And that is another detail that, may be rushed, and the team that claims that they were doing all the historical research, not really there. And I don't know how they screwed up this hard, because all the previous Call of Duty over the decades, over 1 decade, they've been doing it right, and all of a sudden they decided to screw up this time. So that is another historical inaccuracy, historical inaccuracy that I can, let go, because of the fact that this is an arcade game, is the recoil, the reload speeds. I mean, this game, people reload like as if they were like some kind of professional hitman, like for reals. The M1 Garand, they reload that thing so fast, and that kind of really throws it off. Balancing factors, the guns, everyone's just running around with SMGs and SDGs 44, and that really throws off the game. When I look at a game like World at War, which is probably my most favorite World War II Call of Duty in terms of multiplayer, it was diverse, aside from having MP40s running around with Juggernaut and Stopping Power. But you can switch to a Thompson. Some people like to play with the PTRS, Springfield, the car without a scope. This game, I can't figure out how to take off the scope off my sniper rifle, which is odd because bolt action rifles were used without a scope in World War II a lot. So don't have a clue why they did that. I saw that the Car 98K had 7 rounds instead of 5. It's these things that adds up, and you just start to question that they just made this game World War II themed to appease the audience, and it was rushed out. Reskin of another game that should have been in this place, but because of the recent outcries, then this game just becomes it is. But overall, I think the game is solid in terms of the functions of the game. Now, with concerns with the campaign, I watched the trailers, and like I said, this is definitely geared to the American market, and it's focused on the American side. Looking at it, it looks like a story with a squad, a battalion of people, like Call of Duty Big Red 1 that I played. It was all focused on one group of people. When you name the game World War II, you expect that you will fight all sorts of fronts. And like I said, the Soviet Union and the British were the biggest factors in the war in the European front, aside from the Americans supplying the weapons for them in order to fight the war, and of course the Americans' final assistance in the D-Day invasion, right? Normandy. So that was like the the nail to the coffin when the Americans invaded and assisted in the situation, along with the Canadians and all the other people who participated in D-Day. I'm not sure how many different countries participated, but I know for a fact that there was a lot of people who signed on the Allies to finish off the Germans, and the Germans knew that they were going to collapse on the Third Reich over its own weight, right? So, campaign. My expectations. Just judging from the trailer, it's a downgrade. Now, it depends. I am coming from a perspective who just wants to play the campaign and view it from a warfare perspective. Right now, the campaign looks like it's more shifted towards a personal, more close story rather than a secular story. Like in World of War, you have a secular story. You got you're playing a character you're fighting in the Pacific. You're playing a character you're fighting on the Eastern Front. This game looks like you know your buddy very closely. Like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 1. You know Soap. You know Ghost. You know Shepard. These are characters that you're very close into the story. But when you take it from a historical perspective, from a warfare perspective, World War II was a massive war, and normally you don't focus on one character, but since the market is shifting more towards the aspects of personal experience, like in Battlefield 1, even though I haven't played the Battlefield 1 campaign all the way through, I already know that they're trying to appeal to the audience by emotions, trying to learn about the hero that you're playing, the protagonist, who the antagonist. I saw the trailer where there was a guy who got thrown into the train, and this guy just figures out. It's more deep, and I guess this is a first time for Call of Duty in terms of World War II, so it's nice. But I was hoping for a Soviet and British campaign, and I did not see any trailer that showed it. Does it make a difference? Yes, it does. I personally think it makes a big difference, and like I said, I think that they didn't put enough resources into putting a Soviet or British campaign, since this game seems rushed out to me. This is all behind the scenes. I'm just assuming. If it was, if World War II was already from the beginning, then I don't know what to say. They were designing this game from the beginning before the controversy, then that's a different story. And to get my point across, the quality control of this game, comparing this game to an older Call of Duty, I am going to compare this with Call of Duty Finest Hour, the first level. And Call of Duty Finest Hour was my first Call of Duty game. This is my first PlayStation 2 game. This is my first console game that I have ever purchased for myself. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you guys Call of Duty Finest Hour and let you guys compare the story, the atmosphere, the feel. Does it give you goosebumps on your skin? This was the original Call of Duty Blood. Alright guys, I have booted up my GameCube emulator and put in Call of Duty Finest Hour. This is the first Call of Duty for the console platform. So for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and I'm not sure about Xbox. Now remember, the original first Call of Duty was only for the PC. It was a PC exclusive. So Activision hired a company called Spark, which is no longer available. I believe they died during the recession in 2008, or they were just not funded anymore, to do a console version of the original Call of Duty. Now here's the intro cutscene. The Soviet Union. Now remember, I'm shooting for the atmosphere, the feel of the game. How can you immerse yourself in the game? And this game came out in 2004. It's not about the graphics. It's about the background, the way it's, the way the story is being told, the multiple sides. In this game, we have the Americans, we have the British, we have the Soviets. In the new upcoming World War II, it looks like it's only the Americans. There's the Shermans. The audio, really good music. The music really speaks for World War II. This is a period of time when Activision put a lot of money into looking for World War II type of music. Sound effects, sounds like Stukas. Call of Duty Finest Hour. Now, I do apologize. This is on a emulator. I don't have an actual GameCube or PlayStation 2. Even if I did, I don't have the recording equipment. So, with emulators, if you've never heard about emulators are like a program that you run on your PC that can play GameCube, PlayStation games from the older generations. So I'm gonna hit down here, start game. Oops. So notice that you have 3 different fronts. You got the Eastern Front with the Soviet Union, you got North Africa, which is the British, and you got the Western Front after D-Day. Look at that. They basically put a lot of years, from 1942 all the way to 1944, with the Americans entering the war on the European front. Recent Call of Duty, the World War II, looks like it's going to be only focused in 1944. Would make sense because they're more closely related to the stories of a group of people rather than a spectrum of different types of characters. So, what am I looking for? Now, like I said, the current Call of Duty is just geared towards the market. It's all about the American side. Back in the day, Call of Duty, the first one had all 3 nations for the campaign. The second one, I think it has at least 2. I know it has North Africa and it has the Soviet campaign. Not sure about the third one, which is either the Americans, I think, is the American or the British. But back in the day, Infinity Words wanted to do all sides of the war. Now, Call of Duty 3 was developed by Treyarch. I heard that it was not that great, and I think that was the first time Treyarch took a try onto the Call of Duty franchise. Call of Duty 4 shifted from shifted from World War II to Modern Warfare, so that was a change. And then World at War had only 2 nations, so it went from 3 nations to 2 nations, and those 2 nations was the Soviets and the Americans. Now, the difference with World at War from all the other Call of Duty that I'll let go on it for having 1 less nation is that for the first time, they go into the Pacific Theater where America fought its biggest enemy to this day. World War II biggest enemy was Japan. That was the biggest war that the United States had ever fought. It was not the longest war, but it was considered the biggest war. And if you want to include the Cold War was more like, playing your cards. But in terms of numbers and, the brutality, it's pretty high up there with the Vietnam War. So this was the first mission I played on this game. And just this mission, I can just prove my case about how brutal it is to play the Soviets and technically all the other nations I also could have tried, like the British. But, the point I'm trying to bring up here is that World War II, from what I've seen, is just focused on Americans. And Americans, like I said, they entered the war very late. While the Soviet Union and the British had it pretty bad. Like, they were dealing with a ton of shit with the Germans. The Germans were destroying the Royal Navy in terms of their U-boats. They need help of getting supplies into the mainland, but they couldn't do that because the Germans had a navy that was just, inhibiting their chance. The Germans were pushing the Eastern Front after Hitler betrayed Stalin. Believe it or not, Stalin and Hitler together started World War II by invading Poland, if I recall correctly, and then Hitler turned on Stalin, who is the comrade, general, I don't know what, the leader of the Soviet Union technically, but there's like a bigger word for it to make it sound cooler, and that started the biggest, most bloodiest battle in World War II overall, because the Soviet Union and the Germans have the highest casualty out of World War II. So the first mission is called Not One Step Back. We're about to enter probably the most bloodiest battle in history, but at least it is the most bloodiest battle in World War II, and that is to reclaim Stalingrad. This was the last stand for the Soviet Union. If the Soviet Union lost Stalingrad, it would have been over for the Soviets, from my understanding, or at least from historical perspective, from what people have said from experts. But Stalingrad was a battle that the Soviet Union could not lose, and they would do whatever they can to win that particular battle, and they did, with the cost of lives. Look at that, they use old historical films. They don't use 3D CGI. They actually took historical films. So the game was trying at the time. Infinity Ward's Spark. Early Call of Duty, they actually took the time to do research, find films, and tell the story of the war. Today, it's more shifted towards like a fictional Band of Brothers. Unless the Band of Brothers is actually a true story. I'm just assuming that it's not really based on a true story. They just put a historical fiction to it, right? Try to tell a story fictionally in a historical period. That is, you know, it's not easy to find these type of footages nowadays, but that is the effort that they put in to look for these footages. So now we're going to head into the background story of the soldier. Now, yes, I talked about how, you know, World War II is all about the personal side. This game also incorporates the personal side, and that is the character here. He's a watchmaker. He has family. He wants to get married.
But now our cities are under attack, and Stalingrad will put an end to those dreams. We should have known the Germans would turn on us. Break the treaty.
The Germans would turn on them.
The commissars surrounded us up so quickly, speaking of the motherland, the sacrifices of our brothers, our duty.
And this guy, I think he is really Russian. You can tell by the accent. Now he has been drafted to defend the motherland. I'm going to turn it up for myself here. Hopefully you guys can hear if I edit correctly, but just the audio, the visuals. Remember, this is an emulator, so there might be some bad, negative static I can't fix, because that's how emulators are, but you can get an idea.
You're about to begin the greatest moment of your life. The Germans have lost hundreds of tanks and planes. Hitler's brutalized hordes are now advancing towards Stalingrad over mountains of their own dead bodies. Our Bolshevik party, our nation, our great country have given us the task not to let the enemy reach the Volga and to defend the city of Stalingrad. Forward against the enemy, up into the unremitting battle, comrades, for Stalingrad, for our great country, not one step back. Cowards and traitors will be shot. Do not count days, do not count miles, count only the number of Germans you have killed. Kill the German. This is your mother's prayer. Kill the German. This is the cry of your Russian earth. Do not waver! Do not let up! Kill! Death to the German invader! Go, go!
That is one of the best speech in Call of Duty history, personally, for me. You see how desperate they are? They were cowards who were jumping out of the boat, and the officer himself killed them. That is how extreme this is in the Soviet front. And the audio is a little static here. Staticky. MG42s, artillery, Stukas. You know, this is the shitstorm that the Soviets had to deal with before the Americans came. And this game is 2004. It's pretty impressive. Flags. Everyone being blown up. Now, in America, you know, everyone's lives mean something. On the Soviet side, people's lives is just a means of winning the war. And when I say that, we're sacrificing people every second here. Soldiers. And you can tell how underdeveloped the Soviet Union is, because one of the systems in the Soviet Union is that not everyone gets a rifle. Because of the lack of industry. There wasn't enough weapons to distribute to the soldiers. And if I can get over here. And part of that reason is because the Soviet Union was a agriculture type of economy rather than industrial. So the first person gets a rifle, second person gets ammo, and third person gets nothing. The way it works is that the first person with the rifle dies, second person picks up his rifle with his ammo, uses that rifle, and if he dies, third person with nothing picks up all the stuff that was left from the first two soldiers. That is how brutal the Eastern Front was. And that is how the Soviets won the Eastern Front. It was all brute force. And for those who didn't know, before the Battle of Stalingrad, Stalin, being the man he is, he wanted to prove himself and he was making all the shot calls. As a result, he lost a lot of territory and he was on his last stand in Stalingrad, as I said, right? And right in Stalingrad, he hired, not really hired, but asked his generals to take over, and that is how they start the uphill battle to defeat the Germans. I'm not sure that if Stalin killed his generals after World War II, because he was worried that the generals had a better image than him, but, you know, if you hear anything about Stalin, he's quite a guy. MG42 just going off, the sky is pitch dark, smoke. This is the Call of Duty that I grew up with. This is the Call of Duty I know of. It was brutal. You know, although it's not all realistic, but at least they have the atmosphere. And now we are in the territory. Remember, gotta find a rifle, right? Gotta find someone to die.
Wait here.
And we got ourselves a rifle. I remember doing this mission when I was little. It was quite tough. Now, the sensitivity in this game is not the same as modern day games. I am playing with an Xbox One controller, and being a PC player, I rarely play with a controller. I only bought the Xbox One controller just to play some GameCube emulators. So, yeah, it's gonna be bad. And the controls are bad also. See if we can hit this. Like, the reload button is on the D-pad, not the X button. The X button is to go prone or crouch. The Y button is to jump. Normally in today's game, it's A to jump, B to go prone or crouch. And if I can find... Now I don't understand why they don't have an MP40 in World War II. This is a pretty significant weapon. It's like the most iconic weapon for Call of Duty franchise, aside from World of War making it infamous. But this was iconic. This is a very iconic weapon. It was just slaughtering these Germans. Technically unrealistic for slaughtering these Germans, but you know, it adds to the feel of brutality. Take no prisoner. The Soviets are just pushing in with the flags. When was the last time I saw a flag used in a Call of Duty game when someone's charging up? So let's try out the... Let's see if I can find some Kar 98AK. Kar 98AK, 5 rounds. You know, that's the actual Kar 98AK, or at least that is the standard issue Kar 98AK. Let's reload. Use like down D-pad reload. Now you're about to see like the second best speech in this game. Look at that. Everyone's just running into the machine guns. Music kicking in. Really, really nice music. I like the Soviet theme music, communist music as people describe it. It's just... I don't understand why they can't make another Soviet campaign. This is like... It's the easiest campaign to do because you can just build your imaginations of the brutality. Yes, the Soviet Unions did use these massive attacks, charge in. They can't kill them all at once, right? So we might as well use it. Let's use the Kar 98AK. And if you play the original Call of Duty, I did a Let's Play on the original Call of Duty. There was a mission that's similar to this, and if you don't run fast enough with the massive attack, the the Soviets will kill you themselves. Like, they have an MG behind you if they think that you're not courageous enough to charge into them. So let's push in. There's a picture of Stalin. This is a really fun gun to use. You know, we're not bolting at absurd speed like the modern day Call of Duties. Like, everyone's like a hitman these days. Whoops. Is that a German soldier? Yeah. What's the last time I heard a Call of Duty game call these Germans a fascist pig? Yeah, look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the original Call of Duty. This is the atmosphere. This is what it feels like to play the original Call of Duty. This is what I was looking for. World War II. It's not quite there. Maybe it's too early for me to judge. I never know. Maybe World War II will have a smashing campaign. But even if the campaign is smashing, they did a poor job with, you know, these small details. Like I said, the British soldiers are not speaking in English, in terms of British English. And yeah, there's a swastika. I'm gonna get demonetized because of that. But yeah, that is Call of Duty Finest Out. This is the beginning of Call of Duty, and today's Call of Duty is definitely different from before. Aside from that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time on my channel.